we're back, and you guys all heard from us. We sort of bantered about the Blue Jays for about 40 minutes or so, but now it's time to hear from all of you, and it looked like you guys had a lot to say, a lot to ask, and obviously that's very good. We encourage listener cooperation. So, Mo, you check the mailbag. How heavy is the mailbag? What do we have today?
It's got quite a bit weight on it right now, but let's start off with at CJ_Slays_ the _balls, and he says, when is Bichette coming up?
I think you have a better idea of the exact terms of how it works, but I'm under the impression, and you can totally correct me if I'm wrong, that he's under the same sort of issue that Vladimir Guerrero Jr. underwent last year, where if he's called up too early, that'll affect his service time. And the reason why they didn't want to call him up last year is because they didn't want to take off a year of service time for a season that really wasn't going anywhere. So by that logic, I would expect that he'd be up around the same time as Vladimir Guerrero Jr. was this year, except that it would be next year. So April 2020 is my prediction. Is that right? Is my calculus correct there in terms of him not being able to come up before that deadline?
Yeah, no doubt. He is under the same terms as Vladimir Guerrero Jr., where the Jays will choose to keep him and protect him for another year. And on top of that, he does have an injury right now where he is recovering. So you would see him develop more in the minor leagues to get back from that injury. And as we've seen, hand injuries in baseball can take a long while to get the feeling back and to get back into everyday baseball activities. All right, we got Scott_McMulkin71. How would you rate the draft from a glance? I know it's hard to rate it now.
Well, I think Scott pretty much answered your own question. It's really hard to tell right now. I think in terms of the overall talent that was acquired, you can't help but be excited that these guys can potentially be good players. But as we sort of talked about before, it's sort of a wait and see. It's hard to put stock in prospects that really haven't played professional baseball at all in their lives. And as I mentioned earlier on the podcast, we're at least a few years away from this even being a discussion for any of these guys. Anything more you'd like to add?
Yeah, kind of what Scott said, and he answered his own question. It's hard to rate it now, but it's always fun to talk about it. Drafting two 6'6" pitchers in the same round, I believe, or was it the second round? It was really fun and exciting for the Jays, but you never know. Maybe Kendall Williams, second. I believe he was a late first round pick, or was it the second round? I may be wrong. Anyways, he's coming out of high school, so it may be hard to see if he's going to sign with the Jays. And with Alek
Manoah.
Yeah, Manoah. It's always hard to see how those types of pitchers with a limited amount of arsenal and repertoire how they will fare. So it'll be fun to watch them. No doubt about it in the minor leagues, and we'll keep up with them. So yeah, we got Danger_1973. Is TJ Zoik ever going to report to Buffalo?
You want to start off this one, and I'll sort of chime in with my 2 cents after?
Yeah, so TJ Zoik, he was a highly drafted player for us back in 2016, and he had a solid season at AA right now. Last season, I believe he pitched to a 3 ERA down there, but right now he's up in Buffalo, and he's been on the injured 7-day DL for quite a while, and there's no timetable for his return, and I really don't know what more to say. We haven't really been getting news on him. He's only 23 years old, though, so that's the bright spot. But I would expect him, when healthy, to be up for the Blue Jays next season.
Absolutely. A guy who's young, who had a lot of potential, and who's not far away from the major leagues, had enough seasoning. No reason why you wouldn't give him a shot if he's healthy and pitching well in Buffalo. So I think that if he can get back, rehab from his injury, come back and pitch strong in Buffalo, the Blue Jays should definitely entertain the prospect of bringing him up and seeing how he would fare out at big league arms here in Toronto.
Yeah, the scouting department did their due diligence in scouting him, and he was drafted in the first round, so there should be some excitement right there. And his minor league stats, 15-16, and with a 3.45 ERA is not bad. So let's see how he fares when he comes back from his injury. It'll be only fun to watch. All right.
Also, one second before
Yep.
I go on, it's also, I think it's worth to mention that it helps that Shapiro and Atkins were the ones who drafted him, so there's really no excuse for saying, oh, well, it was a previous regime guy that, this regime doesn't really love, so it's their guy, so I'd expect that at some point he'd be up. It's not the same with John Harris. He was drafted by Anthopoulos, so maybe you can say that, oh, well, he's not necessarily a guy that this front office values. I'm not saying that they don't, but I'm just saying that could be said. I don't think you can make that excuse with Zoik. I think that, again, if he's healthy and pitching well, should be up here.
So we got Anki.Daisy. Pardon us if we pronounce the names wrong. He says, thoughts on the Jays drafting Braden Halliday. Hopefully he can carry his father's legacy.
I thought it was an excellent story. I mean, obviously, Braden Halliday, also a friend of the page. His father, everyone knows he needs no introduction. The great late Roy Halladay, Hall of Famer, and probably the best Blue Jays pitcher to ever take the mound. A beloved figure. So obviously, drafting his son, certainly an exciting story considering the bloodlines. I certainly like the idea of having Braden Halliday. Unfortunately, I'm not quite sure if he will sign with the team.
He will not.
He will not, exactly. So I think the story in itself is something exciting, but he will likely not ever play a game for the Blue Jays, considering that he will not sign after the draft.
Yeah, he would be giving up a lot of money. I believe he is a finesse-type pitcher. We saw him in Team Canada in spring training. So I do believe if he goes to college, gets some seasoning under his belt, he'd go higher in the draft rounds, giving him more of a signing bonus, which gives him more inclination to sign with the team, and also kind of like Chris Bryant, where we signed him out of high school, drafted him out of high school, but he did not sign with us. Then went on to get drafted by the Cubs. So yeah, Braden has announced on his Instagram page that he will head into Penn State, and the Blue Jays will lose his rights.
Probably the right choice.
Yeah. So you got myself asking a question. Favorite player in the farm system? I want to hear your opinions.
Obviously, it's hard not to be excited about Bo Bichette.
Let's keep it in the lower classes. Some players that people don't know typically.
Lower classes. I'll tell you what, a guy that they drafted last year. I believe it was last year. I could be wrong.
Yeah, Jordan Groshans.
Jordan Groshans, exactly. He's a guy that I should fact check on this. It was either this year or the year before where he was drafted.
Last year.
It was last year.
11th overall pick.
11th overall pick, yeah. So he's a guy that we mentioned a year into his Major League Baseball career in the minor leagues. Very interesting player, an infielder. You always like to draft infielders because you can never have a deficit of infielders, and they're the easiest position to transfer into the outfield or move him over to second base, maybe get a little more arm strength, move him over to third base. He's a shortstop naturally, so certainly you like to draft shortstops, as I mentioned, because you can move them around a lot. And already in this 1 year under MLB Pipeline and the professional baseball, he's 5th on the Blue Jays top 30 prospect list, and he's one of the 6, I believe, top 100 Blue Jays prospect, currently 94th on that list. So if Jordan can continue his development, which has gone very well so far, he can certainly be another one of those guys that you can add to the mix as the Kevin Biggios, the Vlad Guerrero Jr.'s, Bo Bichette type players.
Yeah, for sure, and some scouts have compared him to Troy Tulowitzki, which is always fun. We also have a very good low tier, I would say. We have Santiago Espinal, who we got for Steve Pearce last year. He's been pretty good in AA this year. We got Riley Adams, a catcher that's been crushing it in New Hampshire. We got Juan DePaula, where we got from Kevin Pillar. Yenzi Diaz has been really good for the New Hampshire Fisher Cats. You should expect to see Yenzi up with the big league soon. Same with Patrick Murphy. He's been a really solid starting pitcher for the team. We got Hector Perez, the guy that we're waiting for. He does have command issues, but that was soon a trade. We got Griffin Conan, who's back from his suspension, and some scouts have been really excited for him. We got those two international signees, Miguel Heraldo and Orelvis Martinez. And obviously we got the big dog. You got Adam Kloffenstein, who we also drafted. I believe he said he didn't want to be drafted unless it was. He didn't want to be drafted to another team unless it was the Blue Jays because of his good friend Jordan Groshans. So it's always good to have friends. And then for me, I'd say the best underrated player is Eric Perdinho. I feel like he's going to be a really good major league player. He's only, I believe he is only 18 right now, and his estimated arrival time is 2021.
Yeah, no doubt. He's a guy that I was sort of drawing a blank on, and as Aaron Hicks hits a home run, and the Jays are now down 4-0. He's another guy who's a friend of the account, and he's got an electric arm. Super raw prospect. You mentioned he's at least a few years away, but definitely a guy that, in terms of the depth of pitching over the pipeline, he's by far one of the best, along with Nate Pearson. So watching his development will not only be fun, but super exciting as well.
All right, we got two more. We got, do you see us being sellers at the trade deadline? And that is from King_BearDemus_Prime.7.
Yep, that's all I can say. This team will not be buyers, that's for sure, and they'll do their best to make sure that they can sell off all the players that have value, and maybe if they have guys who teams value at a premium, they can sort of sell them off as well and get more value for them than maybe originally expected. I expect to see them, sort of trade away a few relievers for some lottery tickets, like we sort of seen last year. Maybe a guy like Daniel Hudson would be a prime example for that. But yeah, no doubt, this team will not be buyers. They'll be clear sellers at the deadline, and that's really not much of a surprise.
Yeah, and you should expect players like Justin Smoke to be moved. You should expect maybe a Marcus Stroman and Aaron Sanchez, and as you said, some bullpen pitchers. You might see Daniel Hudson being moved. You might even see, maybe if the right opportunity comes, a player like Joe Bianchini being moved. Sam Gaviglio, maybe. And I just feel like...
Sorry, go ahead.
I feel like selling is the only option for this team. They're not a very good team, as they got Edwin Jackson throwing up meatballs right now.
I mean, I think Ken Giles is a super interesting trade piece. I mean, a guy that's putting up these numbers that he's putting up, I think you're almost forced to trade him because it's almost hard for his value to be any higher than it is now. And he's got control. He can throw 100 miles per hour. He's a guy that I think he can bring you in some fine guys. You think recently in the trade for Aroldis Chapman back in 2016, the Yankees getting a player of the value of Gleyber Torres. Obviously, I don't think the Blue Jays can necessarily get a guy to that talent, but I think that he can do really well for Giles, considering how well touted middle and back end relief is in today's game, especially in the postseason where starters don't pitch as much and it's sort of a bullpen game from the fifth on. And many times you see in the playoffs.
Yeah, and also saying that I'd say packaging a player like Ken Giles with a player like Marcus Stroman and Aaron Sanchez would only give you a better package at the trade deadline. And I feel like these types of players will be a premium at the deadline for desperate teams, desperate contending teams, and desperate fringe contending teams. And I feel like Ken Giles would undoubtedly bring in a nice haul of prospects for the Blue Jays. Alright, moving on. We have one last question for the podcast, and we got thoughts on Lourdes Gurriel Jr. coming back from AAA, AAA.
He's been raking ever since he's been up from AAA. I believe over the last few games he has been a bit of a slump considering how well he started ever since coming back. I'm not sure he's got a hit in his last few games, but overall, Gurriel, guy who was handed the starting job at second base to start the season, didn't get off to the great start. We saw him really not hit balls at all, hit low batting average, no power, didn't hit a home run before he got sent down, and even defensively you saw even more issues. We saw him be horribly inaccurate with his throws. We saw him being unable to field. I think it's all part of the growing pains, and he's shown over the last week or 2 weeks or so that he can be a very good player, and And he's another guy that I'm excited to